Okay, today our topic DML. So the DML command is it can be contained in commands are insert and update and delete. In first command is the insert. That insert its syntax is the insert into table name values, and values contains a values one and number of values you have to inserted from this table, Swarna table. So here the data loading. So the data loading concept purpose we have to using that insert. So the data loading methods is the two type of methods it can be having. One is the value method and address method. So first one is the value method, and insert this value method purpose you have to insert the some of the values. How can you insert the some of the values from this table? So here using the insert command into Swarna table. So how much of values you have to insert? Just here only you have to use. So the for the inserting purpose, data inserting purpose, you are calling that values. The data is the value. You have to calling that values. Values are a insetting data. So here within the double quotations, you have to insert the data. That is the thing actually. And previous also we already discussed that um, within the double quotations, you have to in using the data in the sense numbers and these are all things you have to using. But within the double quotations, what you have to insert it, the data is inserting into tables. So here also you have to insert within the double quotations. That is the very most important actually. Within the double quotations only you have to insert. The here you have to use within the um, quotation. So this is the one moment, one and comma and here for example education. Education within the double quotation only you have to use that data. Education Bangalore for example. So here this is the one column and this is the one column and this is the one column, three columns you have to using. But here first column, um, first value, the purpose just to have to remove the double quotation. That is the no problem. Without the double quotations we have to use this numbers. That is the serial number actually. So that is the primary key. It can be automatically, it can be taken. So these those two columns purpose you have to use the within the double quotation. So then you have to give the semicolon and give the enter. One moment. That it is running very slow. That's why the first time only. Yes. That row is inserted, and one more row you have to use, and here you have to change that serial number is the 2, and here also education from Bangalore or Hyderabad. Here also you have to insert it one more row, and one more row we have to insert it um, where it is Secunderabad. Already 3 rows you have to insert it. First you have to data you have to verify. How can you verify this? Select star from um, Swarna 9. So here the ID is the okay. So here we have not changed this ID. So that's why it can be taken as a one number. So it's no problem. um, Here you have to select it. So some of the data it can be entered. So how many records you have to inserted from this Swarna table in the sense number of records you have to inserted. And here how can you insert the null values? So that null values purpose you have to use, for example, and here also I have to insert this one, and here, for example, just you have to remove this, remove this record, and just you have to mention the double quotation only. So on the time, it can be accessing the records or not. Just you have to find out that. See here, so that one also it can be insert that row, but how it can be inserted, how much of records it can be accessing. The here you cannot be given any record, but the only and double quotations you have to given or you have to mention in this line. But how it can be considered that? See here, once again you have to access this. See here, in the location it can be accessing from the null. In the sense, how can you understand it in this field actually? The here table structure is available. In that structure, it can be contains a 3 columns is there. It's available. So without the one column, can you insert the records? Yes, you can insert the records. It's no problem. But without the record, that column, it can be accessing from the null only. As a null record, it can be accessing. It's no problem. That is the, and only lost record only by the using of that null, it can be inserted. No, in the middle of also, it can be access the null records. See here, for example, here you have to remove this record. Only you have to accessing from this double quotation only. In between double quotation only you have to access. How it can be accessing? It is possible. So here also it is possible. Inserted that records. Again, you have to check out that records how it can be accessing. See here. In the middle of that column also it can be accessing with the null value. So that is the very important actually. You are inserting the records, of course, but without the one column record, are you inserted the remaining of that column data? Yes, it can be inserted. And here you have to ID is there. from this table, it can be having the ID. The primary key ID column is also it's available. But here, without those records, without the remaining of records, you have to insert it from the using of this ID. Just you have to check out this. Here, both two columns records you cannot given or you cannot providing any record on the time. It can be accessing. See here. See, both records it cannot be accessing with the only it can be you have to providing only ID number only. You have to providing then also it can be accessing. It's no problem. But without the records, it can be accessing. See here. In that way also you have to check out. Without the record, it is possible. See, no, it is not possible. Without the record, you cannot be you cannot be enter and you cannot be insert anything. Without the inserting anything, it cannot be accessing from that table. That is the main important actually. The number of columns, the number of values you have to insert inserting purpose it can be possible number of columns and number of values you have to insert it from that any table it is a possible without the records you cannot be insert anything so and for example why I am saying like this so here uh, two columns without the two records you have to insert it from this table and without the three records and here three columns is available see here what is this here just we have to check out this here three columns is there but without the data three columns in this three columns and these three columns as a null we have to insert it no that is not a possible and three columns without the using of data as a null you cannot be create anything so that is the that is the one thing actually that is the um, what you have to discuss here values method this is the values method so these without the three columns with the three columns without the any values you cannot be inserted anything so that cannot be the table cannot be accessing from your records so as a null records that is the thing actually that is the real and second one is the address method uh, see here Lakshman did you understand that point my point Lakshman
అర్థమైంది
uh,
అర్థమైంది అంటే ఈ రికార్డ్ లో కంప్లీట్ గా అంటే మూడు ఉండాలి ఈ మూడు నల్ల వాల్యూస్ ఉండకూడదు అంటే వన్ నల్ల వాల్యూనే తీసుకుంటుంది సెకండ్ నల్ల వాల్యూ తీసుకుంటుంది బట్ డేటా అనేది ఉంటేనే ఇన్సర్ట్ అవుతుంది ఏదో ఒక డేటా ఏదో ఒక కాలం ఉంటే ఇన్సర్ట్ అవుతుంది
yes without the values it cannot be we cannot be any using of that insert word it cannot be working from the table yeah if it is working that insert command definitely you have to use the one value within the one value it can be insert from your table okay next second one is the address method so this is also data load this is also data load so that syntax um, insert into table name and number of columns, column 1, column 2, and so on, and column number of columns. So, and here values also you have to insert here. The value yes, value 1 and value 2 and value 3 and so on, number of values you have to insert it here. This is the syntax. So here let's start the insert into Swarna 9, and here that what you have to insert the here column from this table. Already we have to created that table. The table, it can be contains this number of columns is there. What is that? ID, name, location. And here the manually you have to insert the single column or number of columns. And here I have to insert one column. Insert in the sense already created the table, already insert the columns also is available. From these columns, I have to insert one more column. So that purpose we have to use this. For example, ID, and here values are from this ID only. I have to insert it. What is that? 4. Actually, here ID 4 is not available. Okay, I have to use this 3 only. See here, it is inserted or not. Yes, it is inserted. So again you have to check out select star from Swarna 9. See here, in previous it is not available. This what is that? 3, it is not available. So you have to given and 3. So that ID also from here, just you have clearly, just you have to observe, you have to create ID. So from this ID, you have to providing this ID value. So from this ID value, in this ID, it can be accessing without the other records, without the any other records. So here you cannot be providing, but without the double quotation also, it can be considered as a null. And here you cannot be given any empty spaces. You have to insert it manually. You have to insert this value manually from this ID. Without the any given blank spaces, it can be accessing null values. This is a very most important. And here you have to provide in each and every ID, name, and column. See here, this is the ID, this is the name, and this is the location. So here you cannot be mentioning any column names, and here you cannot be using any column names. Just you have to using table name only, inserted into table. So what it can be contains column names, that each and every column name, it can be accessing as a this sequence. For example, education, here you have to using this education, and here ID number, and here location. So in that time, it cannot be accessing. What it can be order, it can be maintained from this table. First is the ID, and second is the name, and third is the location. This order you have to following in this value. In that way, from this order, it can be accessing. This one is the ID, and this one is the name, and this one is the location. So from this order only it can be inserted. But here, particularly one column, you have to insert it. And what about the other columns? It can be accessing as a null. So that is the thing. That is a very important. And two ways. And that's why here and clearly mention address method. This value, which column you have to insert it. So from this column only insert this value. So clearly you have to mention a address. That's why you are calling address method. That is the thing actually. Clear, Lakshman? Hello?
The address method అర్థం అవ్వలే.
Address method. See here. Address in the sense, this value, which column I have to access. In manually, you have to mention a address. This is the address actually. This value address, which one is the address? This value ID only. That is the address actually. That's why this address access from this value. Clearly, you have to mention address. This value purpose, you have to mention a address ID. One more record I have to insert it. For example, insert into Swarna 9. Swarna 9. So where you have to mention that address, ID, comma, name, comma, location. Location. Okay. So here values. Values are here you have to mention a first column is that ID and second column is the name, third column is the location. So in the same order and here also values you have to mention in this column which value you want to insert. So that value, for example, 4. That value is the 4. Okay. And second one, and here you have to use, for example, that name is the what is that Oracle. Second one, Oracle. And here also, this is the Oracle. It should be stored from name only. Why? Because and here you have to mention the address. This address only it can be stored from this order. And third one, what is that value? Hyderabad, HYD, for example. So in this order only, you have to given. See here, from this table, in this order, column order, you have to providing the addresses. These are all the addresses. What you have to providing these values. From this value, it can be stored into ID. From this name, it can be stored into name. As a name, it can be stored this value. And this value also, it can be stored from this location. So the addresses you have to providing from this values. So here you cannot providing these 3 column names, but here you have to using the only one value. Particular this value it can be stored from this ID. You have to providing address. This for inserting value, it can be following that address only. We are discussing about that only address. This value, it can be stored from this address. These values, it can be stored from this address. It is not a it is not a targeting this. This is the ID or this is the name and this is the location. It is not should be identifying. This is address only. It can be following these values. How it can be inserted? The following these addresses only it can be inserted these values. That is the thing. See here, it execute or not. Yes, inserted the row. See one more thing. Just you have to check the addresses. See here, and in previous, you have to store the value from this ID. Remaining these columns automatically it can be accessing as a null. And here you have to store these three values from these addresses only. So that's why this 4 is it can be stored from this address. Oracle name is stored from this address. This HYD it can be stored into from this location. So that's why that is the thing actually. So here insert method it can be following addresses only where it is stored from these values and single what is that this storing values it can be inserted from this table as a following address. So here this without the address what you have to using value methods. That value methods you cannot providing any addresses. Indirectly you have to insert it from these values. Lakshman, yes or no?
Okay,
Lakshman?
got it.
Yeah.
Got
right.
got it.
Yes. This is the insert values. Here you cannot be providing any addresses. And here insert the values. It can be following that addresses only. From this, based on these addresses, you have to insert it manually from these values. That is the thing actually. And here automatically this order it can be following from this insetting. From this insetting, it can be following this order. Automatically, it can be following this order. So see here. Here, if you want to give any education, if you want to providing here ID number or location. See, one more you have to insert this. Just you have to try. For example, here automatically it can be taken, of course, but here just you have think about like that. So here you cannot be following any order. For example, here, uh, for example, education, education, and here you have to provide ID number is 9, and here, um, for example, Bangalore and Martha. See here, insert the record. So it is not accessing. It is providing that error. Why? Because column not allowed here or column not allowed here. So cause 8 and 8 action. That cause is the action. Why? Because insert into Swarna 9 values, education 9 and Martha. Here you cannot be following any sequences or following that column names. Why? Because and here you have to create it from this order only. From this order only. ID, name, location. Why? Because and here we have to providing that data type is the number. And here you have to providing the varchar. And here also you have to providing the varchar data types. But here you cannot be following in that way. In that way. Here you have to using that varchar, and here it is this is the number data type, and here also varchar. So in that way, it cannot be accessing. Here the 9 is there, and ID it is not available that ID. Why? Because this order you cannot be following in this record. In that way, here automatically that value it can be considered as a it can be considered as a sequence order. what you have to follow in from the table, that columns. So that order only you have to provide the data. So okay, and here you have to give a manually you have to provide in Swarna 9 ID values. For example, here you have to provide in, for example, name and value is a Marthali. Marthali. See here, if it is stored that manually, if it is stored that, so on the time, it cannot be storing that values also. Why? Because and previous that 9, what is that data ID, without the data ID, where it is stored that it is not a possible without the store. For example, here, for example, comma, see here, for example, ID and value, um, for example, here, ID and name and value also, you provide that value is the 5, for example, or 9, give the comma, and double quotations also you have to provide, single quotations, sorry. See here, insert that row. Yes, inserted that row. So remaining that value, so here you have to provide it. And without the ID, it cannot be accessing any record. You should be follows ID. Why? Because remaining those records. See, here you have to check out that. See here, without the ID, how it can be following those columns based on this ID, it can be stored from these columns. Or here see 9 Martali, and here you cannot be providing other column name. So as a null value, it can be accessing automatically. Why? Because these total column names following or based on this ID, it can be inserted. Why? Because here this table automatically as a primary key, it can be inserted this ID. So that's why, and in future or in other classes, you have to discuss about that primary key and and so many keys, surrogated key and foreign key. So those are all things is available. So that is a other topic actually. On the time you have to discuss about that. And here, just you have to concentrate. Based on this ID, you have to insert these records. Without this ID, you cannot be inserted anything without this ID. So that's why, and previous, you have to using already, you have to check out, checking about that. Without the ID, you have to trying about that name only, you have to insert it. On the time, it cannot be accessing, it cannot be allowing any record. With the ID only, based on this ID only, in remaining records, it can be accessing. Clear, Lakshman?
Yeah, clear.
Yeah, right. Why? Because whenever you're discussing about that single command, that command you should be, and each and every way you have to concentrate. Why? Because okay, this is the address method. Just like this address, following this address only you have to insert it. In this way, whenever you discussing about that topic, that is not useful to us. Why? Because and each and every way you should be check out how it can be working from your database. That is the very most important. In that way, in the multiple ways, I have to explain about that. And second one is the update. And this is also, these are all DML commands. It should be concentrated. It is a very most important. In the first time also, I have to give in that information actually. So first one is the insert is the completed for that two type of inserts, value inserts and address inserts, and here update. So this update is used to update existing values into new values and overwriting the existing values. Clear? Updates is used to update existing values into the new values, overwriting the existing values. Without the existing table or without the existing values, you cannot be update. That is the main thing. If you want to use this update, definitely you have already created the table, already insert the values whenever you have, then only you have to use this command, update command. And over the, what is that? Previous already you have the records. That previous records, on that previous records, you have to overwrite. And previous value, it cannot be available. And a new value, it can be available. That is the update actually. What is that syntax?